Pushkin.
So you guys are finishing a new album. It's not quite done.
It's basically we just have to mix it. So that's almost done. So we're going to LA in 2 weeks to tweak some mixes, and it's got to be sent to off to get pressed in like 3 weeks. So we're basically done with it. Just have to master it and mix it.
Have you guys mastered anything out there, or do you typically come out to LA to do that?
I mean, we have stuff mastered all over. We have stuff mixed all over. But typically we don't attend a mix session. This is like the first time we've ever done that, just to kind of do final tweaks, because it's so difficult to, it just sucks trying to explain stuff in an email. So little tiny nuanced stuff.
Is that in response to having been unhappy with any mixes recently, or just was the album already mixed once and it wasn't to standard? Or
no, I mean, I think, since Brothers, we've been kind of sending stuff off to get mixed. That was a game changer for us, to be able to tap into someone that's like, that's what they do for a living. Prior to that, we'd mix stuff ourselves, or we would mix it with maybe just an engineer at the studio. But when we sent Brothers to Chad Blake, that was a real eye opener. See what it's like to get something back from someone that's just a master at that craft. And so we've made a lot of albums with Chad. We did the last record with Spike Stent, and then we're working with Manny Marroquin on this album.
Wow. Delta Cream, I guess this decade, from like Delta Cream to now it's just 4 albums, it does seem like the sounds, like you started the decade, almost it sounds like back to like the Big Come Up kind of sound, down to Do the Romp again, part 2, and have kind of slowly moved away, or not moved away, but slowly drifted to a sound that's like it's a more complete production sound, maybe, or a more full production sound.
Yeah, Delta Cream was really just a jam session that we released. We didn't really know we had an album until, how long was it after we recorded that we even listened to it?
Yeah, we did it. We recorded it in December of 2019, right after the first leg of the Let's Rock tour, and then the pandemic happened. I don't think we really checked it out to see what was there until that, like, July or August.
And then we didn't fix anything. It is what it is, No overdubs at all.
No overdubs on it.
Just some percussion. And then, so when we got back to making like a normal Black Keys record, it was more kind of back to, being creative in the studio, working with the studio as a tool to, get creative and stuff. And because that's, part of the fun of it for us has always been recording.
Yeah, basically we put Delta Cream out in spring of 2021, and then we did some promo around that. That was the first time we were able to work in like, a year and a half. And then around that promo stuff, we just hopped in the studio and started working on what became Dropout Boogie. And when we finished that album, we just kept working. So kind of like from that spring of 2021 till now, we've just been in a constant state of recording. So yeah, like we went from that Dropout Boogie into making what became Ohio Players, which was, we recorded like a ton of songs for that album. We ended up releasing 19. And then, we put that out, and then kind of ended up right back in the studio this summer. And just once again, got another like batch of like 20 songs, and we'll put, like 11 of them out on this album.
Do you guys typically record jam sessions, or was that?
No, we don't usually do that, to be honest. I mean, all of our recording sessions start with us jamming, but then we build on it. But this happened because I was making a record with Robert Finley in the studio, and I had Kenny Brown there and Eric Deaton. So, that was sort of the reason that we got in the studio for that in the first place, because we've never recorded with a bass player ever. That was the first time on Delta Cream. So, that was even though it felt like the Big Come Up days and shit, it was like something new at the same time,
Have you guys recorded with a bass player live since then, or no?
Yeah, a couple times. Our cover of "Forgot to Be Your Lover."
That's right.
We did that in L.A. with Tommy Brennick on bass, and we did a couple other songs, I think. But I love it. You know, it really. Now after 20 some years of playing drums, I understand why. You know, it's great to have a good bass player.
Nice to lock in with the bass player.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the songs on Brothers started with bass and drums.
Yeah, that's right. So Brothers was basically cut that way because when we were making that record Black Rock, right before that, we were doing the music, and then we were having rappers come in, so we were making beats essentially. We were focusing on starting the tracks with a lot of them with just bass and drums. So when we went into Brothers, we just kind of maintained that method.
And Mark Neal had an amazing Rickenbacker bass. It was like a Rick 4000 or something. It was awesome. Sounded so good.
And so for Brothers, did you guys put guitar over those basic tracks then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. That's a unique way of, I don't know, that's a really unique way of doing it, especially considering it's a guitar drum band, you know?
That album, most of it was recorded at Muscle Shoals Sound, and when we did that, it still hadn't been renovated, so it was pretty messed up. And Mark Neal brought like this 12-channel Studer suitcase mixer, so that's what we tracked through. So we were only able to monitor 12 tracks at a time. So I think there was a couple songs that had 13 songs, so or 13 tracks, and when we would listen back, we just would not listen to the tambourine. But we couldn't hear the whole thing together for the most part until we got mixes.
You had to trust the tambourines coming through, right?
Yeah.
But there was something about the way that we recorded that so minimal,
mm-hmm.
and then gave it to Chad Blake, who was able to just maximize everything, and he loved it too. He's used to getting sessions that have 1 million tracks, and he loved that, mixing that record.
He loved that there was only about 13 tracks.
Yeah.
Versus yeah.
Exactly. Delta Cream, the same thing when he was mixing that.
How come you guys sent that record to Chad instead of doing it yourselves?
We're not Chad Blake.
Yeah.
Well,
there's only one Chad.
There's only one Chad Blake. Yeah.
But if you guys had been doing it yourself before, it was just a experiment in a sense?
What, us doing it ourselves?
This whole thing was an experiment.
Yeah.
Everything we did we had no idea what we were doing, man. There was no frame of reference. We'd never seen anybody mix, so we didn't know what mixing.
Well, we kind of had. Because we'd gone to shitty studios in Akron and made recordings on an ADAT.
That's what I'm saying.
And then we get the recording back, and it would just sound like the drums would sound like someone was smacking a pillow. So that's when we started just doing everything ourselves. It's like, if it's gonna sound fucked up, at
we
least
can make it sound fucked up.
Yeah, at least let's do it ourselves. And then every time when we first tried to go into studios, back then, around the first, second record, we didn't know how to communicate. We were so used to using a reel-to-reel 8-track or a primitive digital recorder that when we started dealing with looking at a real compressor and stuff, I just remember being mystified on why the VU wasn't hitting the red on a compressor, and it was going backwards. And I was like, dude, this thing's broken, bro. And that, I think sure they thought we were complete idiots, but it was frustrating because we kept wanting things to sound distorted and kind of gritty. And it was really hard to get those sounds in a real studio.
It's been a lifelong search for those sounds, really, to be honest. That's half of the fun of it, though.
Yeah.
The sound on Ohio Players was really cool.
I mean, there's live performances at the root of every one of those songs.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. Songs like On the Game, stuff like that, were we're live in the studio. We tracked that one with bass guitar, keyboards, and drums live, and a couple other ones from that session too. So they really have a great live raw feel. And those were recorded at Toe Rag, world famous Toe Rag that is closed recently. But we always wanted to record there, and I think we may have been one of the very last to record there. Famous London's all analog studio. The guy was really inspired by Joe Meek. Liam Watson, he ran it. It's a really cool place.
And Mark Neal designed the room, right?
Yeah, Mark Neal helped him design it. The guy who recorded us in Muscle Shoals.
Did he work with Joe Meek? Was he around like when
No.
Joe Meek died like
64
68 or something. He killed himself and his landlady, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
some tragic story?
Yeah.
Were you guys around for God, who's the other great John Peel? Did you guys ever do like a Peel session?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did a couple of them.
That was our first kind of big break outside of the US was John Peel playing the big come up. And then our first trip over to England was in like a promo trip when Thick Freakness was about to come out in April of 2003. And yeah, we did our first Peel session there. And then a couple months later, we got asked to come to his house.
His country estate.
Yeah, he would do like his show in the summertime from his house. We had this crazy year of 2003, just being really broke, but traveling a lot. And this one, we went and played some festival in Norway. Then we flew to London. We got picked up, drove right to his house. I just remember we were just so jet lagged. I took a nap in his daughter's bed while Dan played soccer with him in the yard and went through his record collection. And then we did another Peel session, like literally 2 months after that. It was a live thing again with like Steve Malcolmus and the Jicks from in Brighton. And then, we did a Peel session. When we put out Rubber Factory, we landed in London to do a tour there, like right at the end of October. And when we got picked up from the airport, our driver had a newspaper, and the headline was John Peel dead at 64. And we were supposed to head to a Peel session like the very next day. So we actually went to the Peel session still. And they were like, we don't know.
At the BBC.
They're like, we don't know what to do. Like
At Maida Vale 3, right?
Yeah, Maida
small
Vale.
room.
Yeah, they're like, we don't know what's happening, but we know like John Peel was trying to do this compilation of Lonnie Donegan songs. So like we just spent 2 hours trying to learn these two little Lonnie Donegan songs. But yeah, it was like it took all the momentum out of our thing because that was like our only supporter in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, he died. He went on a trip to Peru and had a heart attack.
What was first of all, what was his record collection like? That record collection must have been crazy.
He was crazy. He had different outbuildings. Like there's like a barn over here, and they all had thatched roofs, right? So there's like a thatched roof barn over here. That was all his 78s. And then over in this thatched roof big thing was like all his, 45s. And we dug through his LPs and looked for some stuff, I wanted to hear like Let's Work Together by Wilbur Harrison. And so we searched for it and found the record and played it. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong version. We need the earlier version. So he went back and he found it. He had it.
Fuck, he had all the versions.
He had everything.
I mean, he had 1 million albums,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't that kind of
But, as soon as you sent him on a task to find something, he was like giddy. It was awesome.
Yeah, that Peel session at his house was live on BBC, and his whole family was there, and they made us dinner. It was like, it was really special,
Yeah.
and us, like at the time, we weren't really kind of aware of the gravity of what it was to be hanging out with that guy. He was just kind of this cool DJ, and then, as we got older, we kind of learned like what that show really meant to people and what it really was. And, I wish that we had something like that. I mean, I think the world would benefit from another John Peel.
I mean,
look, if you go back and look at his playlists and stuff, it's incredible what he's exposing people to, and especially like pre-internet, to be able to turn on the radio and have some guy playing you The Residents, and then, a Howard Tate single. Pretty cool.
and the continuity between, he'd done it so long, just being able to present like Led Zeppelin in like 1970 and you know, you guys in 2003. I mean, that's crazy, you know?
It's nuts.
And his sessions always sounded really good to me too. I always love finding like a Peel session, you know, because they sound pretty different from the records usually, but they just sound, I don't know. There was I don't know how if he used it, like, I don't know who engineered his sessions, but they were incredible.
You know, I did it at Maida Vale when we were doing them. I think that's where they did them.
Yeah, as a BBC, their studios are incredible. Their gear was always amazing.
It was like,
That was the first time we ever saw Cole's microphones.
yeah.
Cole's ribbon mics, you know?
Yeah.
No, those BBC sessions always sound amazing.
Because
Did
basically,
you use a ribbon mic?
Always. You know, I mean, after those sessions, we started to, but
yeah, they would have ribbons on everything.
yeah.
And that was a cool thing. You show up and then basically, here's this world-class studio. You've got like 6 hours to record 4 songs. You can do anything you want to do. So, you know, if you wanted to, who knows? They would let you do whatever you wanted to do. The coolest John Peel anecdote is that he told us he was present in Dallas when Lee Harvey Oswald was killed in that parking garage at the police station because he was working for a radio station, and so he saw that in person. And I guess he's in the film.
Wait. He was actually at the police station.
Yeah, when Lee Harvey Oswald gets killed by Jack Ruby, he's one of the guys there.
That's incredible. I'm gonna
Yeah, watch it in slow-mo, see if you can find him.
Yeah, maybe somebody
go
can
back and
find
look
him
at
in the pictures.
maybe he'll be in the files they're releasing, the JFK files that are coming out. John Peel was involved. How does it feel? I mean, I guess the difference between promoting a record then and now, I'm just curious. You guys do a lot of press. Do you guys, like, what, how do you guys go about figuring out the way in which you want to promote a record, or do you not spend much time thinking about it?
Back then, I remember one of the first interviews we ever did with like a European, you know, one of the first interviews, period. We were at South by Southwest 2003, and we did a couple interviews. One of them was with NME. And then we landed in England a couple weeks later for the first time, and our publicist handed us the NME. And I mean, in this interview, we talked for like 30 minutes, and at the very end of the interview, the journalist was like, "So do you guys take drugs? You ever taken any drugs?" And we were like naive kids, you know, and I was like, "Oh, I smoked opium once." And the headline of the fucking NME was like, "Opium Fueled Blues Duo." And I was like, holy shit, this is insane. It didn't really help us sell any records, but it was a cool look.
I kind of miss headlines like that. I miss magazines in general, kind of sometimes for you know, headlines like that, you know?
Me too. Yeah, I miss being able to like pick up a music magazine and it have something I want to see in it, you know? It's like back in the day, like just you know, Magnet or Alternative Press or Flip Side or Maximum Rock and Roll even. Just at our local grocery store, you could pick up this one magazine called Ray Gun, which is like a music magazine that lasted for just maybe a couple years, but it was like the graphic design was so crazy, like you could barely read the articles because they like lay the articles out. But you know, that's where I've actually in the you know early Magnet magazines and stuff. That's where I kind of discovered a lot of what I know about music. That kind of set me in the right direction. Like that's when I read about Daniel Johnston, and, you know, Love Is Laughter and K Records and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know. For me too, though, I'd get set down a lot of like dead ends, you know, like looking through a magazine and you have to try to spend, you know, $50 on a bunch of records I saw in a magazine, and then, you know, they all sucked, and that was kind of a bust.
They usually sucked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought a lot of shitty records.
Were there local like zines in Akron or?
Sort of, but it seemed like a lot of that stuff was like geared towards hardcore punk, which Dan and I were never into.
Never had a stage.
No. We get along too well with our fathers.
Your dads were friends too, weren't they?
Our dads, I mean, we're neighbors.
Are.
They're neighbors, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how Dan and I know each other, from just growing up around the corner from each other.
And your dad was an art teacher or procurer of art supplies?
Yeah,
Dan?
he was an antique dealer, and he collected folk art, outsider art. Yeah, he would, he was like a picker. He would go around Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and he would have his routes that he would run and go to different places and buy things, and then he would sell at shows, antique shows. He would go to like Brimfield, or he would go to the Triple Pier Expo in Manhattan and set up a booth, and I'd go and help him and shit, and it was always fun. I loved doing that stuff.
Did you learn a lot about art through him, or were you interested in learning?
Yeah, I learned everything about art through him, being around him and being on the road. Probably prepped me for touring. Getting in my dad's van and driving from Ohio to New York City, and loading and unloading the van for the shows and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, and he would introduce me to artists and show me the difference between different types of art, and yeah, absolutely.
Has anything of his, or anything you've gotten from him, made it to any artwork, Black Keys artwork or ARCs? Or?
I don't think so. But no, one of the guys that he would help facilitate in Akron, this artist named Alfred McMore, my dad would like bring him crayons and art supplies and pipe tobacco and bring him stuff he needed, and he would try to help him get his art out there, And this guy he would leave voicemails on the phone at our house. And Pat's dad did a story in the local newspaper on this artist. So Pat would get these voicemails too. And it became, the origin of the name of our band, the Black Keys, was this outsider artist, so.
He would call our houses like every day, multiple times a day.
Demanding pipe tobacco and crayons.
And he would say like, he'd be like, if you don't bring me a 2-liter of Coke, some crayons, you're a Black Key. You're a D flat. And he'd make these 5-foot wide, 50-foot long scrolls with crayon and pencil. And so Dan's father had like,
just a basement filled with
100 of them, maybe. Because he would, give him, he was living in like a halfway house, and he had very little resources. So Chuck would like give him some crayons, paper, stuff, then get these scrolls and sell some, give him some of the money. But yeah, they're pretty incredible. He would draw a lot of highway patrol people in high heels.
The big chandelier earrings.
Because he's
a lot
schizophrenic.
of duck boots.
Yeah, it was so cool.
They were like these long stream of consciousness. They'd be like funeral processions. People in open Cadillacs and like all these different. Jesus was playing like rock and roll guitar, and they're amazing, really.
Alfred would wear about 3 or 4 suits at the same time, and then his daily ritual was like to go to the Stewart and Calhoun funeral home, to any random funeral, and just cry.
You show up to random funerals and cry?
This is the person that my dad brought over to the house to spend time with his sons. Expose us to his artwork.
Alfred.
No, his artwork was so beautiful, but like impossible to display.
Yeah.
Like where do you put a 50-foot roll of artwork?
Do you guys still have some of those?
Oh yeah,
man.
My dad got him to do a couple small pieces, and they're okay, but the rolls are actually where it's at.
Yeah, I got one little small one. It says McMore McLest, and that's what we named our publishing company after.
McMore McLest. That's great. Is he still around?
No, he died in 2009, I think.
Did you guys ever play him any of your music?
I don't believe so.
He knew about the band, but I don't think.
Probably no interest in.
Yeah.
You guys might have set him off a little. I don't know. I could aggravate him. Were there other people, like characters like that around town?
Yeah, there's a lot of
I feel
eccentrics.
like there's a lot of characters in Akron.
There was the purple man. Do you remember that guy? His house is purple. His car is purple. Akron's full of that kind of stuff. There's like it's kind of like
Purple man.
purple man. Then there was a guy we called Eep in Highland Square, and then the little neighborhood we kind of grew up around. There was a really eccentric shoe repairman who just retired, but he'd be in there with the fumes and stuff, and he dressed the window up in like inflatable dolls. So really, really out there. Yeah, there's a lot. Like, that's my kind of when I think about like classic Akron, it's like my brother was really into trains, like model trains and stuff. And so we would go on Saturdays sometimes to this place called Glenn's Train Shop. And it was this building covered in ivy in the middle of like the worst neighborhood in Akron, back in this lot. You'd walk in there and just be this guy just smoking with like, 10,000 boxes of vintage trains, just mean as hell. Just like total, like that's what Akron, that's the
Was
classic.
he like did he deal them, or was he just
selling
collecting
them.
them?
He's like, yeah. He's like, what gauge do you want? He's like, HO. He's like, ah. He'd like judge you by the gauge of the train that you wanted. The real trains are O gauge, apparently. That's what you want.
The real trains are what?
O gauge, the big ones.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that means.
I know. Well,
Sounds about right.
I bet Neil Young knows.
I was going to say Neil Young probably knows this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Why did you call why was the one guy called Eat?
This is what he said all the time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Nashville's got to be filled with characters too, right?
Yeah.
It's just filled
It's filled, yeah.
to the brim.
When we first moved to town, we both moved like to the same area here, and we were neighbors with Harmony Korine. So we hit it off with him right off the bat, and through Harmony we met David Berman, and then also introduced to the original kind of cast of eccentrics, which you no longer see any of them anymore, but most of them were in Gummo or something.
You guys have been there over a decade now, right? They're
15 years.
You mentioned the cover of "Forgot to Be Your Lover" earlier. What made you guys cover that song? 'Cause I was scared to click on it, to be honest, because it's such like a perfect record. The original, you guys' version is really good too.
Yeah, no, it's it was just one of our favorites, and we were in the studio, we were hanging out, we were just inspired to do something like that, We really didn't think too much about it, and we really didn't even know if it was going to be on the record or not, But it felt good when we cut it, We had our buddy Kelly Finnegan and Tommy Brennick in there with us. Kelly sings harmony, and it was just felt good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did that. Never Gonna Give You Up on Brothers. I think we've done some soul songs before. Those types of songs are a pretty big influence on us.
Oh yeah,
Which is such big, like "Forgot to Be Your Lover." It's just such a big record,
Yeah, one of those perfect records.
From like the opening riff, the drums on it are perfect. The opening line's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. We mostly just wanted to hear Tommy play that opening riff.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the reason we cut it. No, that was Tommy.
How much time do you spend listening to music these days?
I probably listen to like an hour at least a day of music.
What's moving you these days?
Man, I'm kind of all over the map what I'm into right now. But, we've been doing these record hangs where we play in 45s. So that will, that's kind of got my algorithm going, trying to find like songs that feel like hits but weren't hits. It's kind of like the ultimate goal. But I've got a 6-year-old boy who's into music and opinionated, so a lot of the stuff I'm like trying to play him stuff, see what he's into.
What are his opinions?
I mean, he's got good taste, but it's funny when he'll hear something and like it, and he's like aware enough to think like that he should be embarrassed by liking it, so he won't like not. He'll keep it a secret. Like if he think, because he'll think like I will like make fun.
Smart kid.
I know. I mean, his intuition's spot on. But no, you don't get made fun of for what you listen to in my house till you're 11.
What about you, Dan? Do you listen to a lot of music, or like not work related?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say similar, especially digging for records, online. It's kind of become like one of my favorite things to do. It's just like chill out for an hour and like search for music, because I swear to God, every single day I can find something that blows my mind if I search hard enough.
It's true.
So, yeah, honestly, like, as soon as we started doing these record hangs, I think I started listening to way more music on average.
Same.
Who organizes the record hangs?
We do. We just kind of pick like cities where it will make sense when we're on the road, or cities we think it'll be fun to do. So yeah, we just had a meeting the other day to kind of pick out like the next couple months of it. And then some of them are kind of last minute,
Yeah, it's kind of fun just to pop in somewhere and unannounced and spin some records.
Did you guys spin records like that out and about like before that, or no?
A little bit.
Kinda,
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah, Back when I did the Arc stuff, I would spin records with Richard Swift and Leon a few times, here and there. And then I started doing it on my own just a little bit. And then shortly thereafter, invited Pat to do it with me. And then we both kind of got hooked on it, really.
Yeah, it's addictive. I'm with Dan on that. Like I've definitely probably spending like 10, I don't know, at least another 30 minutes a day extra listening to music because of this. I'll go down rabbit holes and trying to find stuff. And I've learned more about music in the last probably 2 years than I had in the previous 10 years.
Really?
For sure. Not
What
just
are you
like
guys digging?
not just like the history of music, but just like kind of maybe how to make it.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, because, I mean, to your earlier point, like finding songs that sound like they could have been a hit or should have been. I mean, it's fascinating how much a hit. I mean, I guess we all know it because we know hits that kind of aren't that great. But it's fascinating how much a hit really has nothing to do with how good a song is necessarily. There's all these.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. That's why we feel like we can play records for like 3 hours and like they're jams, and people will be dancing for 3 hours straight, and they won't know a single fucking song. You know what I mean? We love that.
Yeah, like the song could have like.
There's nothing that's like more annoying than just somebody going up and just playing hits off an iPod. You know what I mean? Off a computer. But like,
oh my God,
it is fun to like be able to like see the crowd move to a song they don't know. It really is satisfying.
I think that's the biggest thrill. Is because it's not playing something obscure to be obscure. It's like it's got to have this. It's like this perfect combination of like.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, we're turning it off.
Yeah, it's like it's a because it's got to, not only does it have to like groove and have the right production, it's got to have like the right mix. There's so many of these songs where they seem like they're gonna be it, then you get the record and the mix is just
It's fucked up. The drums aren't there. It doesn't work.
yeah.
Sucks.
It's a lot of the
It's
time.
weird. Yeah, you'll spend hours and hours and hours searching for songs. You'll find like songs and you get them sent to your house, and like only like 10-15% of them actually are as good as you thought they were. Pretty consistently.
Yeah, like the vocals are like 25% too loud. The drums are just like almost good, loud enough, but not there. And then you put it on in the club and it doesn't work.
Or like the drums are great, but then there's like the hi-hat is like
Something is just
annoying, or-
messing
Yeah.
it all up.
We can live with it as long as we can live with some of it. But yeah,
Do you find through digging though that do you ever find yourself lost in a sense of like after 30 minutes, an hour of listening to something, you kind of don't know what's good anymore?
yeah, that happens to me when it comes into this specific thing. I've definitely purchased a few records and I'll get them like, why the fuck did I buy this record? And I was like, really be like, what was going on here? And it was like, you know what it was? It was like I just put so many hours into looking for something that I think I just wanted to buy something so I could have something to show for it.
You can get yourself worked up about the smallest thing about a record. The smallest reason why you need this record, is enough to buy it. And then
I've definitely bought a record the other day because the snare drum sounded so bad in a good way that I was like, maybe Dan and I should sample this.
what record was it?
Oh, man. His last name's Washington. I forget. It's a decent song, but the snare drum's real messed up. It sounds like a broken 4-track. It's cool.
Do the record hangs impact the way you guys make records in the studio?
1,000%. Absolutely. No, I mean, we're spinning records and like seeing what gets the crowd moving definitely influences us when we get in the studio and what we want to try to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of songs on the new album that definitely exist because of the record hangs.
Mm-hmm.
What tracks are those? I've only been able to hear 2, but
Yeah, and one of the songs, both of them were, one of them was a rough mix that you heard.
which one was that?
I mean, if they sent you No Rain, No Flowers, that was
The title track?
That was the wrong mix, yeah. Yeah, that's like part of the thing
It
here.
did sound very different from the night before. I heard the night before, and it sounded the production wise, it did sound very different.
Well, it's like, it's the thing that's interesting thing about like we started this album in the very, very end of July and really got going on it like in September. But when you're like writing, recording, that much work in that much of a condensed period of time, it takes a few. Like we kind of finished tracking mostly in the middle of December, but then I think it took us like a couple weeks of getting away from the record to get back to the place where we could start mixing it, start getting it finished. That's where we are now. But yeah, there's like one song on it that's just like kind of cumbia influence because Dan's been playing a lot of cumbia at the record hangs. But yeah, I think that it's an interesting thing trying to figure out how to put an album out in 2025 versus 2005. Because it used to be like the biggest difference is it's like, yeah, of course there was press and stuff that you could do. There's things to do. But really it was like, it really felt like back then, like your album came out, then it was like, okay, now people are finally going to get to hear it. And like, there was this life to it. Like where it was like, and it kind of feels inverted now where it's like the minute your album comes out, it's like, unless you have a couple of hit songs on it, it's just what's coming out next week,
Yeah. The weird thing about that though, from the, listener perspective and just thinking about music as a consumer, I guess, is it automatically puts all new music in the same frame, in the same context as like old music, like in the sense of like when the Ohio Players comes out, I'm sort of guilty of the same phenomenon. I listen to it and I pretty quickly move on, but then I also find just as quickly as I move on, I pretty quickly come back to it. But I mean, I'm usually listening to old stuff because it's like you have this whole, everything's at your fingertips now. So I'm like listening to, whatever, Aretha records I never heard before really, or, and then Nat King Cole. And then I'm listening and then it's like, I'm back to listening to the Ohio players. And so in a weird way, I also feel like it makes new records, it makes them feel like classic records a little sooner than it used to, you know? Whereas before I used to just burn records out after a year, and then I'm like, I don't know if I ever need to hear that again, you know?
I heard something a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it's true, but the mere thought of it gave me a slight existential crisis, which was that there's more music released every single day in 2024 as there was in the entirety of 1989. I don't know if that's true, but
Could that be true?
it feels like there's some sort of, it kind of feels like that. You know?
That's Pat's truth.
I've chosen to believe it. Also, I have other feelings about UAPs and things like that I've chosen to believe.
What are those feelings?
I don't know. They change day to day.
What are they today?
I haven't thought about it yet today, so I'm like, no, but you know what? There's just so much good music that's been made, and it's like, it's like if you're a 15-year-old now and you have Spotify, like I wish I could have experienced, I wish I could have had my teenage years when there was something like Spotify. The amount of time Dan and I spent looking for music when we were teenagers and up through our 20s is insane. Like when Dan used to come over to my house or that I lived in with some friends where we would do started the band, his minivan, he'd pull up with his minivan and open the side door to get his amp out, and just literally 100 CDs would just fall on the ground. We'd be picking them up. Crazy box sets, things, just every single dollar he was making was going into buying music to try to hear it, see what was there, And
I was gonna say, forget time. The amount of money when you had no money you'd spend,
Yeah, well, I think Dan spent all of his money on that. But yeah, that choice you have to make when you're a 14-year-old kid and you're just getting into Led Zeppelin, and you go go to the record store and you could end up hating Led Zeppelin if you picked the wrong record right there. If you walked out with Presence, you might never like Led Zeppelin. But if you got Led Zeppelin 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 4, Houses of the Holy, then I imagine you'd end up buying Presence eventually.
You would get there. That'd be last.
Yeah.
Were there groups like that for you or artists like that for you where you just heard the wrong thing first and then just had the wrong impression for far too long?
Well, I wonder if they had that record In Through the Outdoor. I wonder if that has some sort of reference to their catalog. But yeah, I mean, here, just today, one of our engineers at the studio asked me if I was into Spacemen 3. And I was like, actually, I was a hip teenager. I bought a Spaceman 3 CD when I was 15, and I it was way over my head. I really didn't get it. But then I got into Spiritualized, and I'm just now getting into Spaceman 3 a little bit, and it's been 30 years. But there's a lot of times I think if you get the wrong album, you could maybe not see the light. But I think that's cool. I end up respecting bands that have catalogs like that. Like Pink Floyd is that band to me too. There's just a lot of evolution from the first record through the, I guess through the mid-70s all the way up to The Wall.
Then there's groups like the Rolling Stones where it's there's a lot of output for a certain period and then a limited output, but the odds are against you picking a bad one, I guess. If you're at the record store and you're 12 and you never heard of the Rolling Stones, you're going to buy a Rolling Stones record.
There's just good
odds
advice.
You're probably going to pick up.
Yeah, if you the advice is if you're going to buy a record from a classic rock band, just avoid any album where they're wearing a pastel sport jacket. If they're wearing pastel muscle shirt, if they're dressed like Miami Vice, skip the record. and you're gonna be
Right.
good.
There is this, what is that Stones record where they're like laying down and they got like neon on or sport coats?
I owe it to them to never listen to that.
It's not bad though.
I don't know. The cover is just so bad. They got
I
such
judged
good
it for a
record
long
covers.
time. It's not bad.
I just have a thing about digital 80s reverb, and so I hate the whole. I think maybe because my parents got divorced right in mid 80s, I fucking hate, like, people are like, oh man, like, you like this band that kind of sounds like Bruce Hornsby. Like, you fucking should just kill me right now, because I don't want to remember what 1986 felt like.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Digital reverb brings back too many painful memories.
It fucking does, dude. I really can't hear it.
That's amazing.
Sorry, man.
No
Good
nostalgia for that. I do like Dire Straits a lot, though, that Brothers in Arms. But it's like, that's...
There's a lot of reverb on that, or on the snare.
It's tasteful, but like that, you know, I can't go later in the 80s than that.
Do you have prejudices like that, Dan? Like musical?
Oh God, yeah.
Not
Absolutely.
Of other kinds.
Absolutely, man.
He's got the same prejudice. That's the thing.
Yeah. No, I'm picky, man. I'm picky about, I mean, everything. I mean, that's like when people say that you guys are influenced by blues, it's like, yeah, but like, what blues are we talking about? You know what I mean? Or like, what hip hop are we talking about? It's like, we start getting into specifics. I mean, we love music too much to just generalize, really, at this point. We spend so much time thinking about it. It's like, you know, not everything's created equal. You know?
Yeah.
Not, you know, for each person it's different, but.
Yeah, it's like if someone's like, I'm really into wine. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? It means they're a complete fucking snob about what wine they're drinking. It's like us about music, you know?
We're the
It's
same.
like, oh, I really love food. It's like, oh, do you want some Ruffles? No, motherfucker. Like, I like
like
good
food.
food.
Do you want Ruffles?
Fucking idiot.
It's a good call.
It's like,
It's funny. I guess, you know, you mentioned it, like, do you just like how general the label blues can be? Like, I feel like when people think blues, like the reactive thought is like Muddy Waters, but, you know, I don't know if it's sacrilegious. I don't really like Muddy Waters.
No.
You know, like, but pretty quickly, I guess, if you think about the blues, it's like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, might be like the two strains maybe, and it's like I think I'm just more on that side of things than, I don't know.
Yeah.
first blues album I ever heard was Electric Mud. So I love Howlin' Wolf and I love Muddy Waters, but I like the bastardized version of it all. I'm just now kind of getting into the other shit. Dan's was way into like Mississippi Fred McDowell, all kinds of shit that I'd never heard. He exposed me to all this stuff.
Yeah, man, I loved like the raw, early, primitive kind of blues, like stuff from Memphis before they actually had like bass, you know, where it's just kind of like guitars and drums. A lot of like one-man bands, two-man band kind of stuff. Joe Hill Lewis and Dr. Ross, the harmonica boss, stuff like that. Those guys were my favorites.
How did you start discovering that stuff?
My Uncle Tim was really into blues music and has really great taste. He's a fucking snob too. And he hit me to some really cool stuff early on. But, you know, right when we were starting to like get serious about music, that whole Fat Possum record label kind of came to be and started to have their moment. And it was really, you know, it had a major effect on me, you know, because for the first time I loved blues music, but it was all like antiquity, you know, it wasn't like current. But then the Fat Possum stuff came out, and it was like, oh, these guys are real. You can go to and they come to like the Rock Club in Cleveland, and I can go see them. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was just such a game changer. And so I started to like really get influenced by that scene in particular, which was very raw. And stuff like Sidell Davis is really hard for people to listen to. You know, it's very out of tune. But, you know, it's also very beautiful. Potent.
Yeah, which I guess is even more so. I mean, again, we were talking about the way a record's mixed. You think a record's gonna be great, you get it, and it's mixed weird and it sucks. But then there's records that are mixed terribly and you wouldn't want them any other way. Yeah, sometimes I try to wonder what would they sound like if they had been recorded.
Well,
like
that's
a Steely
that's
Dan
sort
record.
of
Like, fuck, I don't know if I want to hear that. You know,
It's like, yeah, a lot of blues music got messed up because it got recorded too well. You know what I mean? It's like,
I think jazz too.
yeah, maybe, yeah, something about like that kind of like, music that's heavy on the improvisation. It's really nice to get it in a place that's not actually a recording studio, to where there's like the room is kind of alive and less of like a science laboratory. You know what I mean? And I think that's why some of the best recordings are, live recordings, field recordings. Like my favorite Fred McDowell recordings were always the ones recorded at his house, stuff like that.
Yeah, the jazz. Definitely prefer jazz recorded at live at the Village Vanguard type of shit. It always sounds so much better.
Whatever magic's in like those Fred McDowell records recorded at home, is that ever in your mind when you're recording stuff? Like, it would be, I want something like that. I want to go for that. You're not going to get it, I guess.
I mean, that's why we went to Muscle Shoals. That's why, that's probably why we recorded in an old tire factory instead of going to a studio. It's all because of that. I think we've made most of our decisions based on that, And, when I'm producing records too, I've recorded a bunch of records in the houses when it was just as easy to record in a studio. When it was easier to record in a studio, just because it was like musically more appropriate,
I was way into music from Big Pink when I was like 16, 17. And my dad was, told me like they made this, record in the basement of this house on the cover. And ever since then, I was like, that's the coolest. You can do that. So yeah, I mean, I got a 4-track when I was 13 years old. And started fucking around with one in my basement, making absolutely terrible shit. But the first time Dan and I jammed, he came down. And at that time, I had this Marantz, pretty nice cassette 4-track. And I don't think Dan had seen a 4-track yet. And we just kind of sat there and just started fucking around, showing him that. And I would take it over to his parents' house. We'd sit up like in their tiled bathroom just to get different sounds.
Sounded like shit.
Sounded like dog shit. But it was worth a shot. We used to do shit like, too, like on Thick Freakness, I forget what song it is, but Dan wanted like a Leslie effect or something. I just started swinging the microphone in front of the amp while we recorded. It actually sounded fucking cool. That's the kind of shit we would do. Put like broken.
That made the record?
Yeah, that's on the record.
Was it like did you get that first take?
Probably. I forget what song it is, but yeah, it's there.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Dan's Uncle Tim once brought over this like Fender reverb tank. And then that became our whole identity for like about 2 months. Just putting everything through that shit.
Our first effect.
Yeah.
How does the No Rain, No Flowers, I heard the wrong mix. How different does the final mix sound?
I mean, you get the basic idea, I think. Yeah. It's not that far off.
Okay.
But, yeah. Just a little bit more work to do.
It's a pretty different record for you guys. Like song, I don't know, sonically, it just sounded so different.
Yeah, we've never really written with piano players before. That was one of the first times we've ever done that. So that instantly was like different for us. But natural, it was like we wrote it together with Rick Knowles in the studio here, and it was like we worked really quickly together. So it just whatever it sounds like, it was pretty natural the way that it unrolled.
How did the writing go? I mean, was it based off jamming, or was it based off of someone bringing something in?
Rick likes to start with a song title, So he was asking what if we had any song titles, and that was one that Dan had. And writing with the keyboard player, like we worked with, like Dan said, I guess a lot of keyboard players on this record, and to see the way that they choose to voice chords versus guitar, obviously it's all kind of, a lot of it's very fresh to us to hear what you can kind of get to, and Rick's really good at that, and it's a chord master. So to sit there and watch a guy, it's like master of his craft and been doing it for a long time. It's like, the thing is that, I mean, I've never sat in a room with like a guy like that before. We've worked with musicians that are writers that we're friends with, but to work with like someone whose sole job is that, it was like, it was like going to songwriting school a bit. It was just to see how they choose to work, and then to see how they entertain, the way that we want to move the song forward, and like to get that collaboration thing happening. Like that's the cool thing with Rick, is that we wrote these songs with Rick like 4 or 5 months ago, and he was in the studio a couple of days ago, and we're sitting there. Still, he's passionate enough about this shit that he still wants to make sure that we're getting everything, and he has ideas and we have ideas, and so it's a cool thing to see the process all the way through with someone that gives a shit.
But you weren't like tweaking songs still a couple days ago, right?
Oh, we're still tweaking shit.
Still?
Oh yeah.
Was my impression was that you guys worked pretty quickly, but is it like, I guess, working pretty quickly and then going back to something, like that's not.
It depends on what it is. It's like we decided to do a cover of this song 2 days ago, and so we spent like 3 hours. We spent 2 hours tracking the basics and then getting a rough together. Then another 2 hours the next day, and there's 4 hours all in on this song, and it is maybe very close to done. That's one way that we can do shit, and then another way is like this method where it's like get with a songwriter, and with Rick, maybe we'll write in 2 or 3 songs in a day, and then there's like then you start to get into that, start trying to figure out how to do this, and then maybe there's multiple approaches to it. But once you get to a point where you have 17 songs going, it's like if you go in for a day of work, even if you only want to do a little bit on like half those songs, whether just as overdub or 2, you're talking about 5 hours of work to touch all the songs a little bit, So the record can take time.
What song did you guys decide to cover?
We're gonna let it be a surprise, I think.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
Yeah.
All right.
We just cut it yesterday. We haven't even had time to think about it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll tell you what it is. We're doing a compilation of songs considered the world's worst songs, and we're trying to make them good. And we built this city. It's our cover of Jefferson Starship. We built this city, written by Bernie Taupin.
You guys made a documentary, right?
We didn't, but there has been one made.
Is that coming out? Not coming out? Sounds like not too exciting.
I think it come out. Yeah. We've just been fucking grinding in the studio, bro. Yeah, I think since between we've been really on this creative streak right lately, so we've just been focused on that, and now we're about to put this out, and we're going to go on the road a bit this year, and
Yeah, we're getting ready to not be able to like go in the studio very often. Yeah. There's lots of shows coming up, so.
Got it.
We're trying to get it in while we can.
Yeah.
Is that a fun shift to make, going from the studio to on tour?
I think tour's fun. Playing the shows is fun. It's just about, I think we, like if you like drink too much tequila, like you might never want to like taste it again. We almost got there kind of with touring before, so it's like there's a little bit of that, a little bit of that sense memory of what it feels like to be on the road for an entire year. So even though we have like, it's only like maybe 50 or 45 shows, it's still like, you know, and now that we have kids, you know, Dan's had kids for, you know, 17 years, but I've only ever toured like twice with kids, and now so like, you know, it's a little bit, it's hard to get away. But then I guess once I'm away, it's kind of good. I get more sleep. But no, I think that we're excited about doing some shows. We're going to open up the set list. I feel like it's a thing that you got to do. It's the thing that the fans want, and so like just make the most of it. And I think one thing we've talked about is just like really kind of opening up our set list. You know, when we kind of did this transition, like started moving into the arenas around Brothers, El Camino, it was like, you know, getting into this whole different thing that we not only had never experienced, but Dan had only ever been to like one arena show, and I'd never been to an arena show. So it was like we were now playing. Our job was now doing something that we'd never even experienced.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, I feel like with the lights and the whole thing, it's like I feel like we started kind of like maybe losing sight of the catalog that we've created.
Were they fun were they fun to play, arenas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, any show can be fun.
Yeah, it all depends on the audience.
Play a festival.
You know, it really helps when there's an open pit in the front, you know.
Yeah.
When you're in an arena and it's seated, or when you're in a theater and it's seated, it's like
It's hard.
it's not so much fun to play rock and roll in those kind of places.
Or we're on a stage and there's like a football field between you and the front.
Yeah.
Like at a festival, you know, there's like, you know, the energy from the crowd is
Crucial.
crucial. That's like the most.
How does that get decided? I mean, obviously a festival, that's kind of that's just up to somebody somewhere. But when it's like a Black Keys show and you're going, you know, to different city to city, like, are you guys allowed to dictate like how, like the first 10 rows are seated or not? Or, you know?
I mean, if you're playing an amphitheater, you're kind of stuck with whatever's there. If you're in an arena, you get a little bit of choice, you know, to a certain degree. But there's certain rooms where it's just, you know, designed to be that way. Like the Oregon Theater in Chicago, Brixton Academy in London, the Zenith, Barrowland. Like there's these rooms that are like 4,000 to 6,000 seat, like the Anthem in DC. The rooms that are like 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 seat, big rooms, big theaters with an open floor. That's the sweet spot for us.
Is there a world where you guys would say like, we're only ever going to play those, or primarily?
Well, I don't think enough of them exist to you just be playing the same 10 cities. But those are the most fun. You know, I think it's almost worth it to just do a couple nights in those versus, you know, hitting some stuff where it's, you know, you might miss the energy. But at the same time, part of the fun of this job is traveling. You know, it's just about how much you do. And it's like, it can be fun, like, you know, to hit up some of these, you know, off the beaten path cities and stuff. It's just about how long you're out there for, you know. But I'm excited about like our first leg of this tour is like 3 weeks. That's the ideal amount. We have to go to Europe for a month. That's a little bit much. And it's like funny because every time we go to Europe, and this has been the case, except with the exception of 1 or 2 tours for 20 years, it's like you're not going to make any money, but it's really important you get over there and do this thing. I was like, well, who's making this money? Because we're earning it. Like, it's coming in. There's like millions of bucks, bro. But where does it go, dog?
Did you find that out?
Yeah, I did find it out.
We just have to do one more tour and then they'll tell us.
They're always like, one more tour. Dude, we had done this tour. This is in 2012. Dude, that's the year they gave us like that tequila taste of tour. It was like, we were on the road all year, and we had just finished playing Reading Festival right outside London. And we were about to go home for a month off, and then we had to still do the West Coast of the U.S. and Australia. So we still had like 4 weeks of touring left, and we'd just gone all year. And our agent comes back. He's like, I need you to come back in December. we're like, where? Come back. Wait, like, you got to do more Europe, December. You got to, and we had just played 3 nights at this place, Alexandria Palace. So we sold like 30,000 tickets in London. Plus we had just played the Reading Festival, direct support to Foo Fighters. So we'd already sold 30,000 tickets in the city. And he's like, I need you back. You got to really prove, you got to really like, this is going to, it's going to set the tone. You got to do like a marquee show. So we need you back. 2 nights. So we went back to London and did 2 nights at the O2 Arena. So in like 1 year, we sold like 55,000 tickets just in London. And I still don't know if we made money on that tour, actually. I don't think that we did.
Can't you audit that kind of a thing?
It's sketchy, dude.
In hindsight, would you go back? Like, was that the problem? Just
What's that?
Saying no?
No, I think that that's the problem with that happen. Like, it can happen is just like, you got to know when to say when. Like the other day, like, our manager called and was like, we got to, we have this tour that's already too long to go to Europe. And they're like, we got to offer to go to add on to this one more show. And I'm just like, it doesn't really matter how much it's going to pay or what it is. It's like, it can't do that. That's the time slot. That's the thing. Because it always gets you by the balls, but like, the next tour, next time you go back, it always happens.
But you've learned now.
Well, that's why if you look like the interview with what's her face, Kate Nash, I saw like did an interview about like touring, what touring looks like for her, and I think people who aren't in the industry like see that and I was like, what what's she on about? Like, but no, what she's saying is 100% accurate.
What did she say?
She said she's going on a month-long tour of Europe. Everything's basically sold out and she's not making money. That's the reality of what this touring has become. Because like once all the money went away from the recording side, then the people that like suck the money out of the music industry, they have to go into the live side because that's where all the money is. And they saw people making it, tons of money. I mean, like Taylor Swift's tour did like $6 billion. Yeah. People are going on there to get the money. The cost of like renting a bus is like 4x what it was 10 years ago. You got your commissions, your taxes, the what people expect to get paid to go on tour with you is also way up, as it should be because inflation is crazy. So then the only thing that hasn't gone up but has maybe gone down is the fees that are coming into the band. Ticket prices up, hotels are up, all the vendors are up. Everything's way out of control. But like the amount of money that hits the actual musicians is way down. Yeah, we're excited about this album. But yeah, I was trying to say this earlier, but it's just like, part of this whole thing is like figure out how to roll a record out, how to like, and so for us, it's kind of like, for me at least, it's like the most exciting thing about making music is like when people kind of get to, that's like the one perk of this is like people get to experience music for the first time together. And I feel like, we're giving the first peek in this record in February and the record doesn't come out until way later in the year. But I think that the reason is just so we can find a few more other special moments to introduce these songs in a way that's thoughtful and fun for the fans. So yeah, we got a lot of cool shit to share this year. I mean, I think the reason why we never got into writing on the road is because we've always been like a band that writes and makes music centered around creating a master, essentially. Like it's always been about the recording since day one. It's been like since literally the first time we officially like kind of started this band, it was like we made a recording. And then after that, it was like when we get together to make music, it's based around that. So on the road, it's like, what are you gonna do? Put a studio in your bus like a fucking idiot? Like, come on.
Why would that make you a fucking idiot?
Just like sleep on your bus. It's gonna sound like shit. There's a fucking diesel engine below it. Come on. It's like, you can't tell me that what you're doing is so valuable. I have to be recording 8 hour. I have to have my studio with me on the road, in the bus.
Do you know anyone that does that? Or?
No, I just heard.
I'm gonna start doing it.
Don't be a fucking idiot, Dan. Just sleep, man. Well, good luck on the road.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Look forward to hearing the record, and hope you guys make some money, you know?
Me too.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, dude.
Later, y'all.
See ya.
Thanks for checking out Broken Record on YouTube. If you want to listen to us on the go, be sure to subscribe to Broken Record wherever you listen to podcasts.